My name is Evelyn Harper. I am 36 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed my marriage was ordinary, safe, predictable. I believed that was enough. I believed that if I worked hard, stayed quiet, kept the house running, and loved my husband without asking too many questions, stability would protect me. I was wrong, very wrong. For 12 years, I woke up before dawn, packed lunches, answered emails for a job that never loved me back, paid bills on time, hosted holidays, remembered birthdays, and told myself that marriage was supposed to feel steady, not exciting. My husband, Mark, liked to say we were low drama. What he meant was I didn't make noise. I didn't complain when he stayed late at the office, or when his phone turned face down on the kitchen counter, or when he started showering the moment he got home. I didn't complain when date night slowly disappeared, or when his touch became distant, polite, almost professional. I told myself all couples go through phases. I told myself loyalty mattered more than passion. I told myself I was lucky. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, standing in the cereal aisle of a grocery store I'd been going to for years, I saw my husband kissing another woman like he was starving. Not a polite kiss, not a friendly peck. A desperate hands in her hair, pull her closer kind of kiss. Time did something strange in that moment. The fluorescent lights hummed louder, my cart rolled forward and bumped into my shin, and my heart didn't break the way movies show it. It went cold. The woman wasn't young. That's what surprised me most. She wasn't some 22-year-old intern. She was close to my age, mid-30s maybe, well-dressed but understated, no heavy makeup, hair pulled back like she was used to being efficient. She looked familiar. Not because I knew her, but because she looked like someone who belonged in my life. That thought made no sense, and yet it lodged itself in my chest. Mark noticed me at the exact moment I realized it was him. His face drained of color so fast I thought he might pass out. "Evelyn," he said, like saying my name could rewind time. The woman pulled away immediately, her eyes locked on mine. And that's when something happened that made the entire world tilt. She didn't look smug. She didn't look guilty. She looked horrified. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her breathing went shallow. And then she whispered, "Oh my God." Not, "Oh my God, we got caught." "Oh my God," like she'd seen a ghost. I left my cart right there, walked out of the store, and sat in my car for 40 minutes without turning the key. Mark called my phone 17 times. I didn't answer, because something inside me knew this wasn't just an affair. That night, Mark confessed, or at least he confessed to what he thought I knew. He said it just happened, that it had been going on for 6 months, that it didn't mean anything, that he loved me, that he was confused, that work stress had changed him. He cried, real tears. 12 years together, and I'd seen him cry maybe twice. I listened, I nodded. I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I didn't ask for details, because I couldn't stop thinking about the woman's face, the way she'd looked at me, not at him, at me. I asked one question. "What's her name?" Mark hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Her name is Claire," he said quietly. Claire. The name echoed in my head long after he fell asleep on the couch. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I didn't go to work. I didn't call my sister. I didn't confide in friends. I went to the public records office downtown. I don't know why. Call it intuition, call it survival instinct, call it the quiet voice women learn to listen to when something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. I searched for Claire's name, and I found her. Claire Whitman, age 37, licensed physical therapist, no criminal record, no messy divorces, no social media oversharing. But then I saw something that made my hands start to shake. Her emergency contact, listed as Margaret Ellis. My mother's name was Margaret Ellis. That couldn't be right. Ellis is common. It meant nothing. Except my mother had died when I was 9, and I knew her full name wasn't common at all. Margaret Louise Ellis. I went home and pulled out the old documents box from the back of the closet. Birth certificate, death certificate, Marriage certificate. My mother's name, Margaret Louise Ellis. My pulse thundered in my ears. This was coincidence. It had to be. Except coincidences don't make your stomach drop like that. 2 days later, Claire emailed me. Not Mark, me. The subject line was simple. We need to talk. I almost deleted it. Almost. But something in me needed answers, even if those answers destroyed what little stability I had left. We met at a quiet cafe across town, mid-morning, neutral territory. She arrived early. I could tell because she stood when she saw me, like she'd been waiting for hours. Up close, I saw it clearly. Her eyes, the same shade as mine, a strange gray-green that shifted in the light. She didn't smile. She didn't apologize. She said, "I didn't know he was married." I believed her. She swallowed hard. Then she said, "And I didn't know who you were until I saw you." My hands tightened around my coffee cup. What does that mean? She stared at me like she was deciding whether to push a domino that couldn't be unpushed. "Did you ever know your father?" she asked. The question hit me sideways. "No," I said slowly. "My mother never talked about him." Her breath caught. "Did your mother ever mention giving a baby up?" she asked. I laughed. It came out sharp, defensive. "No," I said. "She died when I was 9. She was sick for years before that." Claire's eyes filled with tears. And that's when she said the sentence that cracked my life open. "My mother gave birth to a baby girl," she whispered, "when she was 19. The baby disappeared from the hospital." I felt dizzy. That baby would be about your age. The cafe faded around me. I heard only the blood rushing in my ears. "This is insane," I said. "You're saying what, exactly?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn envelope. Medical records. Old. Yellowed. A hospital name printed at the top. The same hospital where my birth certificate said I was born. "My mother's been looking for her daughter for over 30 years, Claire said, her voice breaking. "And when I saw you, I knew." I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly across the floor. "No," I said. "No, no, no." This was grief talking. This was coincidence. This was my marriage exploding and my brain trying to escape. "I need you to leave," I said. She nodded. But before she did, she said something that made my knees go weak. "If I'm right," she whispered, "then Mark didn't just cheat on you. He slept with your sister." I didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the one after that. I confronted Mark. He denied everything beyond the affair. He laughed when I mentioned adoption. He got angry when I mentioned DNA. He told me I was spiraling. Gaslighting has a sound. It sounds calm. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like concern wrapped around dismissal. But I had something he didn't expect. My mother's old attorney, still practicing, still sharp. And when I showed him the documents, his face went very still. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "there are things in your mother's estate that were sealed." My heart stopped. "Sealed?" I repeated. "Yes," he said, "at her request, to be opened only if certain conditions were met." "What conditions?" He looked at me over his glasses. "A confirmed biological connection," he said, "between you and another woman." The room went silent, and that's where part 1 ends, because the truth had only just begun to surface. The attorney's office smelled like old paper, lemon polish, and secrets that had been waiting too long to breathe. I sat across from Mr. Caldwell, my mother's former lawyer, gripping the arms of the chair like it might slide out from under me. "Sealed documents," I said again, slower this time, as if saying it carefully could make it less real. "You're telling me my mother hid things from me?" He didn't rush to answer. That scared me more than anything else. "Your mother," he said finally, choosing every word like it carried weight, "was a very careful woman." I let out a shaky laugh. That's one way to put it. I had spent my childhood watching her fade, hospital visits, whispered phone calls, medical bills stacked on the counter, her smile brave but tired. I thought I knew her. I thought there were no surprises left. "You were protected," Mr. Caldwell said, "by design." My stomach clenched. Protected from what? He opened a drawer, removed a thick manila folder, and placed it between us. Across the front, in my mother's handwriting, were 3 words that made my throat tighten. "For Evelyn." Underneath that, in smaller letters, "If the truth finds her." My fingers trembled as I touched the folder. "You never told me," I whispered. He met my eyes. "She made me promise." The first document inside wasn't dramatic, no shocking headline, just a hospital intake form dated 37 years ago, my birth date, my place of birth, and a second name, handwritten in the margin. Infant B. I frowned. "What does that mean?" Mr. Caldwell leaned forward. "It means," he said gently, "you were not the only baby born that night." My chest tightened. "There was another infant registered under the same attending physician," he continued, "but that child's records were altered." "Altered how?" "Removed," he said plainly, "reassigned, legally erased." My breath came shallow. "You're saying someone stole a baby?" He didn't correct me. He didn't have to. I drove home in a fog. The radio was off. The world outside the windshield felt unreal, like a movie set I didn't belong to anymore. Mark's car was already in the driveway. That surprised me. He was supposed to be at work. I walked inside and found him pacing the living room, phone in hand, jaw tight. "Where were you?" he demanded. Not "are you okay?" Not I was worried. Where were you? Something in me hardened. "I went to see my mother's attorney," I said calmly. The color drained from his face. Too fast, too much. "Why?" he asked. I watched his throat bob. "Because your girlfriend might be my sister," I said evenly. The silence that followed was loud, heavy, oppressive. Mark laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. "This again," he snapped. "Evelyn, you're losing it." I stepped closer. "Then take a DNA test," I said. His laugh died instantly. "No," he said. "I'm not doing that." "Why not?" "Because it's insane." "If it's insane," I said softly, "then the test will prove it." He looked at me like a trapped animal. "That woman is manipulating you," he said. "She wants attention. She wants money. She wants—" "She didn't know who I was," I interrupted, "and neither did you." That landed. Hard. I watched him scramble, deflect, redirect. "I made a mistake," he said, lowering his voice, stepping closer, trying a different tactic. "It didn't mean anything, Evelyn. I love you." I searched his face. The man I had trusted for 12 years, the man who shared my bed, my life, my body, and all I could see now was a stranger guarding something rotten. "Did you know?" I asked quietly. "Did you know who she might be?" He hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. And that hesitation was my answer. That night, I slept in the guest room, alone, staring at the ceiling, listening to my marriage collapse one breath at a time. At 3 a.m, my phone buzzed, a message from Claire. "I think he knows more than he's telling you." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I typed back, "What do you mean?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. My mother recognized his name. That sent a chill through me. Recognized how? Another pause. She said she met him once, years ago, through a lawyer. My pulse thundered. What lawyer? She sent a name. Mr. Caldwell. The room spun. The next day, I went back to the attorney's office, unannounced. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "Did you ever meet my husband?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. He sighed. "Yes." "When?" "About 8 years ago," he said. "He came asking questions about your mother's estate." My stomach dropped. "Why?" "He claimed he was helping you plan for the future." "That's a lie," I whispered. Mr. Caldwell nodded slowly. "I suspected as much," he said. but I couldn't violate attorney-client privilege. Did he ask about another child? I asked. Mr. Caldwell didn't answer immediately. That was enough. He did, I said. Yes, he confirmed quietly. The betrayal hit me in layers. My husband hadn't just cheated. He had been digging, behind my back, for years. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him nothing concrete, Mr. Caldwell said, only that certain matters were sealed and conditional. And he kept digging anyway, I murmured. Yes. I felt sick. This wasn't a random affair. This wasn't passion. This was calculation. Claire and I met again, this time at her mother's house, a modest place, quiet street, wind chimes on the porch. Her mother, Margaret, answered the door. The moment she saw me, her hand flew to her chest. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh my God." She started crying before I even spoke. She pulled me into a hug that felt instinctive, desperate, maternal. I froze. Then slowly, I hugged her back. She smelled like lavender and laundry soap. "I've waited my whole life," she sobbed. "I knew you were alive. I knew it." Tears slid down my face. I didn't know what to feel. Joy, grief, anger, fear, all tangled together. She pulled back and cupped my face. "You have her eyes," she whispered, "and my nose." Claire stood nearby, crying quietly. Sisters. Maybe. The word felt unreal. We did the DNA test. Private lab, no insurance, no paper trail Mark could intercept. The results would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks of living in limbo, 2 weeks of Mark pretending everything was fine, cooking dinner, making jokes, asking if I wanted to watch a movie. I played along. Because now I knew something else. He was scared, and fear makes people sloppy. One night, while he showered, his phone buzzed on the counter. I'd never gone through his phone before. 12 years. Trust. That night I picked it up. No passcode change. Arrogance. The messages weren't romantic. They were logistical, legal language, meeting times, document requests, and one message that made my blood run cold. If the DNA confirms it, we need to move fast. I scrolled. The will activates only after confirmation. I dropped the phone like it burned. The will. My mother's sealed will. This wasn't about love. This was about money, inheritance, control. And I suddenly understood something terrifying. Mark hadn't stumbled into this affair. He had targeted Claire to get to me, to get to what my mother left behind. And he had no idea that the truth was about to expose him. The DNA results arrived on a Friday afternoon. I was at Claire's house. We sat side by side on the couch, hands clasped, neither of us speaking. Her mother paced the room. The email notification chimed. Claire opened it, read it, covered her mouth. Then she turned the screen toward me. Probability of full biological siblings, 99.9%. I didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't move. I had a sister. A real one, stolen, hidden, and my husband had slept with her. The room erupted into tears, laughter, sobs, disbelief, but inside me, something went ice cold and razor sharp, because now the sealed will would open, and Mark had no idea what he'd unleashed. The will was scheduled to be opened on a Monday. That detail still feels surreal to me. A normal day of the week, traffic, coffee spills, unread emails, and somewhere in the middle of all that, my entire past, present, and future was about to be laid bare. Mr. Caldwell insisted we meet in person. No video call, no copies emailed ahead of time. "This needs to be done properly," he said, properly. As if there were a proper way to discover your life was built on missing pieces and lies. Mark offered to drive me. I told him no. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't soften my refusal. "I'll go myself," I said. He watched me closely, too closely, as if he were trying to measure how much I knew, how much I suspected, how much I could destroy him with. "Do you want me there?" he asked, carefully casual. I met his eyes. "No." Something dark flickered across his face, gone in a second, but I saw it. Claire came with me. So did her mother. The three of us sat together in the waiting room of Mr. Caldwell's office, a strange, fragile triangle connected by blood, loss, and stolen years. Claire squeezed my hand. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I admitted. Margaret reached over and rested her hand on both of ours. "No matter what happens," she said softly, "you're my daughters." Daughters, plural. I swallowed hard. The reading of the will was methodical. Legal language, dates, clauses. But woven between the formal words were messages my mother had clearly written with intention, with foresight, with fear. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat. Margaret Louise Ellis anticipated that certain truths might surface after her death, he read. She prepared this, well, not only as a distribution of assets, but as a correction of history. Correction of history. I felt my pulse quicken. The first condition, he continued, requires confirmation of biological relation between Evelyn Harper and the individual identified as Claire Whitman. He looked up. That condition has now been satisfied. My chest tightened. The second condition, he said, involves the disclosure of events surrounding the birth of both children. He paused. Then he looked directly at me. "Evelyn," he said gently, "your mother did not give you up." I blinked. "What?" "She fought to keep you," he said. "She lost you." The room went silent. "She was hospitalized during labor," he continued, "and while she was unconscious, another infant was recorded in her place." My breath hitched. "Your mother believed," he said, "that her child had died." A sob tore from my chest. Claire gasped. Margaret collapsed into the chair beside her. "Years later," Mr. Caldwell went on, "she discovered evidence suggesting the truth. But by then, the child had been legally adopted, renamed, and relocated. Me. I was the missing child, stolen, renamed, raised by a woman who loved me, but wasn't my biological mother. The ground beneath me felt unsteady. And Claire," he continued, "was raised by Margaret, unaware that her twin had survived." Twin. The word echoed in my head. Twin. The assets came next, the house, the savings, the trust. But then Mr. Caldwell reached the final section. "The contingency clause," he said. I felt Claire tense beside me. In the event that either daughter's spouse is found to have knowingly exploited, manipulated, or engaged in sexual relations with the other daughter, that spouse is disqualified from any claim, benefit, or indirect access to the estate. My heart slammed against my ribs. "This includes," he continued, "marital property, shared accounts, and any financial gains derived from insider knowledge." I stared at him. "Did my mother—" "No?" I whispered. Mr. Caldwell nodded slowly. "She suspected," he said, "and she planned accordingly." When I got home, Mark was waiting. Too calm, too attentive. He poured me a glass of wine, asked how it went. I watched him move around the kitchen like nothing had changed, like he wasn't standing on the edge of his own downfall. "She was thorough," I said carefully. He smiled. "Your mom always was." I almost laughed. "She included a contingency clause," I added. His hand froze mid-pour. "What kind of clause?" he asked. I took a sip of wine. "The kind that protects daughters," I said softly, "from men who think they're smarter than women." His jaw tightened. "You're being cryptic," he said. I shrugged. "Am I?" 2 days later, his lawyer called. Not me, Mr. Caldwell. Mark had demanded an emergency meeting. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't know how wrong. I stayed home that day, cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, waited. At 4:30 in the afternoon, Mark walked through the door. His face was gray. His hands were shaking. He didn't even take off his jacket. "You knew," he said hoarsely. I looked up from the table. "Knew what?" I asked. "Everything," he snapped. "The clause, the DNA, the inheritance." I tilted my head. "You went behind my back," I said calmly. "For years." "I was trying to protect us," he said desperately. I was trying to secure our future. By sleeping with my sister? I asked. The word hit him like a slap. He flinched. I didn't know at first, he said. But when I suspected, I panicked. I stood. You didn't panic, I said quietly. You calculated. He reached for me. I stepped back. You don't touch me, I said. Not ever again. Tears streamed down his face. I love you, he said. I felt nothing. The divorce was swift, devastating. For him, the contingency clause did exactly what my mother intended. Mark lost access to everything. The house, the accounts, the investments, even the car was technically mine. He moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town. Last I heard, he was fighting legal fees he could no longer afford. Claire and I are still learning how to be sisters, twins. It's strange. We finish each other's sentences. We crave the same foods. We both wake up at 3 in the morning for no reason. Sometimes we laugh about it, sometimes we cry. Margaret visits often. She brings photo albums, stories, answers, and sometimes silence. Because some things can't be fixed, only understood. As for me, I'm 36 years old, divorced, stronger, and finally living a life that belongs to me. But this story isn't over yet, because the truth has a way of echoing, and not everyone involved is done paying the price. I thought the worst part would be losing my marriage. I was wrong. Losing my marriage was just the door opening. What came after was the storm. When Mark moved out, the house didn't feel empty. It felt quiet in a way that made space for thoughts I'd been drowning out for years. No footsteps pacing at night, no television murmuring in the background, no tension hanging in the air like humidity before a thunderstorm. Just me and the truth. At first, I slept too much, then not at all. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. It sneaks up on you while you're folding laundry or brushing your teeth or standing in line at the bank realizing the account is finally legally yours. The bank teller smiled when she handed me the paperwork. "Congratulations," she said. I almost laughed. Congratulations for what? Surviving? Claire moved slowly. She had her own reckoning. She wasn't just processing a sister. She was processing the fact that the man she'd trusted had used her, exploited her, and slept with her biological twin without knowing, and then kept going once he suspected. That kind of betrayal doesn't fade. It embeds itself. One afternoon she came over unannounced, eyes red, hands shaking. "I saw him," she said. My stomach dropped. "Where?" "At the pharmacy," she replied. "He pretended not to see me." "Of course he did." "What did you feel?" I asked. She thought for a long moment. "Disgust," she said, "and relief." Relief surprised me. "Because now I know," she continued, "that whatever I thought I felt for him wasn't real." I nodded. "That's how manipulation works," I said softly. "It borrows your emotions and uses them against you." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. Mark didn't stay quiet. Men like him rarely do. First came the pity play, late-night voicemails, emails filled with apologies and half-confessions. "I never meant to hurt you. I was scared. I lost myself. I didn't respond." Then came the anger. He told mutual friends I'd changed, that I'd become cold, that I'd blindsided him with lawyers and paperwork. Classic. No mention of the affair. No mention of Claire. No mention of the will. He painted himself as a man abandoned without warning. Some people believed him. That hurt more than I expected, but not everyone did. The first crack in his story came from an unexpected place, his workplace. Apparently, when he started spiraling financially, he got sloppy professionally, missed deadlines, snapped at coworkers, used company time to argue with lawyers. One Friday afternoon, I got a call from a woman I barely knew. "Hi," she said hesitantly. "This is Lauren. We worked together years ago." I remembered her vaguely. She sounded nervous. "I don't know if I should be calling you," she continued, "but I think you deserve to know something." My pulse quickened. "Go on." He's been telling people you're unstable, she said, that you fabricated everything. But I overheard him talking once, months ago, talking about me. And Claire, she added. My grip tightened on the phone. He said something about getting close enough to access the records, she said quietly. I didn't understand at the time, but now I do. I closed my eyes. Thank you, I said, for telling me. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but this time, not from fear, from certainty. The truth has momentum. Once it starts moving, it doesn't stop. Mr. Caldwell advised caution. You don't need to expose him publicly, he said. He's already lost everything. But exposure isn't always about revenge. Sometimes it's about protection. Claire was a physical therapist. She worked with vulnerable people, elderly patients, rehab patients, people who trusted her judgment. And Mark had already tried to spin the narrative. I couldn't let him poison her life further. We decided to speak, carefully, factually. No dramatics, no exaggeration, just truth. The first person we told was Margaret's support group, women who had helped her search for a missing child for decades. They listened, they cried, they believed us. One woman reached for my hand and said, "He preyed on blood he didn't even respect." That sentence stayed with me. Then came the letter, a joint statement, reviewed by lawyers, sent quietly to family, close friends, and a few professional circles Mark was part of. No accusations, just documented facts, dates, legal outcomes, DNA confirmation, the contingency clause. We didn't name him directly at first. We didn't need to. People connected the dots. The whispers started, and whispers travel faster than lies. Mark showed up at the house one night, unannounced. I saw his car through the window and felt nothing. Not fear, not anger, just resolve. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "You ruined me," he said, voice raw. "No," I replied calmly. "You ruined yourself." He laughed bitterly. "You think people believe you?" he snapped. "They think you're bitter." I leaned against the doorframe. "I don't need them to believe me," I said. "I just need them to know." He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "You think you're so righteous," he hissed. "You're not innocent." That made me pause. "Innocent of what?" I asked. His eyes flickered. "You benefited," he said. "You got the money." I smiled sadly. "I got the truth," I corrected, "and you couldn't survive that." He stared at me, breathing hard. Then he did something I didn't expect. He threatened me. Not directly, not violently, but enough. "If you keep talking," he said quietly, "I'll make sure people know things about you too." I looked him straight in the eyes. "You don't scare me anymore," I said, and I meant it. 2 weeks later, the final shoe dropped. Mark tried to contest the will, again, this time claiming emotional manipulation, mental instability, duress. The judge didn't even entertain it. But court records are public, and once those documents hit the system, the story spread beyond our control. Someone posted a summary online, then another, then a discussion thread. Names started appearing, receipts, screenshots, timelines. I didn't post anything. I didn't comment. I just watched. The internet has a strange sense of justice, messy, imperfect, but relentless. Claire struggled with guilt, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because empathy is her default setting. "I don't want him destroyed," she said one night. "I know," I replied, "but consequences aren't destruction," I said gently. "They're accountability." She nodded, slowly. She was learning. So was I. One afternoon, I received a certified letter from Mark. My heart sank when I saw his handwriting. Inside wasn't a threat. It was a confession, partial, self-serving, but real enough. He admitted he'd researched my background, admitted he'd contacted Mr. Caldwell, admitted he'd pursued Claire deliberately after suspecting a connection. He framed it as desperation, fear of losing control, but he admitted it. in writing. I handed the letter to my attorney. He smiled grimly. "Well," he said, "that saves us a lot of trouble." I don't celebrate Mark's downfall. I don't gloat. I don't feel victorious. What I feel is free. Free from doubt. Free from gaslighting. Free from the version of myself who stayed quiet to keep the peace. Claire and I talk almost every day now, sometimes about heavy things, sometimes about nothing. We're building something new, something honest, something that wasn't stolen from us. And yet, there's still something unresolved, because not everyone involved in our story has been named. Not everyone has stepped into the light, and one person has been very quiet. The doctor, the attending physician who signed those altered records, the man whose name appears on both our birth documents, a man who retired quietly years ago, living comfortably, unquestioned, until now. Because I didn't forget him, and I'm not done asking questions. Some truths don't scream, they whisper. They sit quietly in filing cabinets, in retirement communities, in dusty boxes labeled closed cases. And they wait. The doctor's name was Dr. Samuel Crane. I'd seen it before, of course. On my birth certificate, on Claire's altered records, on intake forms that didn't quite line up. At first, it was just a name. Now, it felt like a door my mother had tried to open but hadn't lived long enough to walk through. I stared at the printed documents spread across my dining table. 2 births, same night, same hospital, same doctor, 1 baby declared deceased, 1 baby reassigned, and no investigation, no follow-up, no paperwork trail deep enough to satisfy anyone who knew how hospitals actually worked, which meant one thing: someone had smoothed the path. On purpose, Mr. Caldwell warned me. "This won't be simple," he said, "and it won't be fast." "I don't need fast," I replied. "I need true." He studied me for a long moment. "You've changed," he said. "I've uncovered myself," I corrected. Dr. Crane had retired 12 years earlier, comfortably, no scandals, no malpractice suits, a respected career, 3 children, a wife who volunteered at the local art museum, a man who looked on paper like he had done nothing wrong. Those men are always the most dangerous. Claire wanted to come with me. So did Margaret. I said no. "This part is mine," I told them. Not because I wanted to protect them, but because I needed to stand in front of the man who had touched the beginning of my life. Alone. His house was exactly what you'd expect. Suburban, neatly trimmed hedges, American flag by the porch, the kind of place that suggests order, routine, moral certainty. I rang the bell, waited. The door opened slowly. He was older than I expected, thinner, stooped, but his eyes, sharp, still calculating. "Yes," he said. "My name is Evelyn Harper," I replied evenly. "I was born at St. Mary's Hospital 36 years ago. You were the attending physician." I watched recognition flash across his face. Gone in a blink. "I'm retired," he said. "I don't discuss patients." "I'm not asking you to," I said calmly. "I'm asking you to explain why 2 babies were born that night, and only 1 was documented correctly." His mouth tightened. "You should leave," he said. "I will," I replied, "after you tell me why my mother thought I died." That did it. His composure cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but enough. He stepped back. "Come in," he muttered. His living room smelled like old books and lemon cleaner. Everything had a place. Everything looked controlled. I sat. He didn't offer water, didn't sit. "What do you want?" he asked. "The truth," I said. "The kind that doesn't rot." He scoffed. "You think you're the first person to come asking questions?" he said. My heart skipped. "No," I said quietly. "My mother did." That landed hard. He stared at the floor. "She was persistent," he murmured. "And you lied to her," I said. He didn't deny it. He sank into a chair, suddenly very tired. "You need to understand," he said. "It was a different time." That sentence, always the same. "A woman came to me," he continued. Young, frightened, well-connected. She wanted a baby. I felt sick. She couldn't have children, he said. She was desperate. And my mother? I asked. She was unconscious, he said. Complications, the paperwork where was adjusted. You stole me, I said flatly. His jaw clenched. I facilitated an adoption, he corrected. Without consent, I snapped. That's kidnapping. He flinched. Your mother recovered, he said quietly. Asked questions. I told her the baby didn't survive. I felt tears burn behind my eyes. And Claire? I asked. She was the original infant, he admitted. But once the switch was made, it was simpler to let things stand. Simpler. My hands curled into fists. You destroyed 3 lives, I said, and you called it simple. He didn't respond. What changed? I asked. What made my mother start suspecting? He hesitated, then sighed. She saw you, he said. My breath caught. She volunteered at the hospital years later, he continued. She saw a little girl, your eyes, her smile. My chest ached. She confronted me, he said. I denied everything. Until she started digging, I whispered. He nodded. She threatened legal action, he said. She was sick by then. I knew she wouldn't live long. Rage surged through me. You waited her out, I said. He didn't look up. I stood. Every cell in my body was vibrating. You don't get to sit in this house, I said, voice shaking, surrounded by comfort, while my mother died believing her child was dead. He finally looked at me. I can't undo it, he said quietly. No, I agreed, but you can face it. I slid a folder onto the table. Photocopies, affidavits, Mark's confession, DNA results, legal opinions. You can cooperate, I said, or you can be exposed. His face went pale. You wouldn't, he said. I already have, I replied. The investigation didn't explode overnight. It crept. Medical boards, ethics committees, quiet interviews, old nurses interviewed again. One remembered something, then another. A pattern emerged, not dozens of cases, but enough to show intent, enough to prove this wasn't an isolated favor. Margaret cried when I told her, not from shock, from vindication. She wasn't crazy, she whispered. My daughter wasn't crazy. Claire held her. I watched, and for the first time I felt something settle, not peace, but alignment. Mark tried to reinsert himself, a final attempt. He sent me a message. You're destroying people now. Is that what you want? I stared at it for a long time, then replied, I'm telling the truth. What it destroys isn't my responsibility. I blocked him. For good. The medical board moved faster than expected. Dr. Crane's license was already inactive. But reputations don't retire. Articles appeared, carefully worded. Inconsistencies in neonatal records. Ethical review of historical adoptions. His name was mentioned, not screamed, but printed, permanent. One afternoon I received a letter from him, handwritten, apologetic, too late. He wrote about guilt, about rationalization, about fear. He asked for forgiveness. I didn't respond. Forgiveness is not a transaction. Claire and I visited our mother's grave together. Margaret stood between us. We brought flowers. We told her everything, out loud. Wind moved through the trees. I felt watched, not in a haunting way, in a witnessing way, like she finally knew. That night, alone in my house, I realized something important. The story had changed. It was no longer about what was taken, it was about what survived, and what would no longer be hidden. But there was still one thread loose, one consequence unresolved, because when systems fail, they rarely fail alone, and someone else had signed those papers, someone whose name had appeared quietly, repeatedly, on documents no one had questioned yet, a hospital administrator, still alive, still respected, still silent. And I wasn't finished. Some endings don't arrive with explosions. They arrive quietly, after the noise has burned itself out, after the truth has finished moving through every corner it was meant to reach. This one took time. Months. Long enough for the adrenaline to fade, for the interviews to stop feeling urgent, for my hands to stop shaking every time my phone rang. Long enough for me to realize something important. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I was living inside it. The hospital administrator's name was Walter Haynes. Unlike Dr. Crane, Walter hadn't retired. He was still active, still respected, still introduced at charity dinners as a man who had served the community for decades. His signature appeared on more documents than anyone wanted to admit. Approval forms, record adjustments, archival transfers, the kind of paperwork no one ever questions, until someone does. That someone was me, and Claire, and Margaret, together. We didn't confront him, not directly. Power doesn't fall because it's challenged loudly. It falls because it's documented thoroughly. Mr. Caldwell assembled a team, not flashy lawyers, methodical ones, the kind who understood systems, not just statutes. Requests were filed, historical audits initiated, internal reviews quietly triggered, and then people started talking. Nurses who had been young then, clerks who remembered late-night corrections, a janitor who remembered seeing a crying woman escorted out of maternity. My mother. Walter Haynes didn't confess. Men like him rarely do. But evidence doesn't require confession. It requires consistency. And once the pattern was undeniable, once it was clear that certain adoptions had bypassed consent channels, once money trails began surfacing, the board acted. Swiftly, quietly. He resigned. No press conference, no apology. Just a brief announcement citing personal reasons. That was enough, because history remembers patterns. Even when men try to disappear inside footnotes, I expected to feel triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. Not the bone-deep exhaustion of grief. A different kind. The kind that comes when you've carried a weight for years without knowing it, and suddenly set it down. Mark tried one last time, not with threats, not with manipulation, with nostalgia. He sent an email, a long one, about the early years, the road trips, the apartment we could barely afford, the life we almost had. I read it carefully, then deleted it, because nostalgia without accountability is just another lie. Claire changed jobs, not because she needed to, but because she wanted a fresh start that belonged entirely to her. She moved closer to me. We started Sunday dinners. Nothing fancy. Pasta, wine. Conversation that drifted from deep to ridiculous. Sometimes we talked about the past, often we didn't. Being sisters didn't require constant excavation, just presence. Margaret stopped apologizing. For years, she'd carried guilt that never belonged to her, for losing a child, for not finding me sooner. One afternoon, she said something that broke my heart open in the best way. "I raised one daughter with everything I had," she said softly, "and the other one survived everything she shouldn't have had to." She looked at us both. I did okay. Yes, she did. I sold the house, the one Mark and I shared. Not because it hurt, but because it no longer fit. I moved into a smaller place with big windows and quiet mornings. I learned how I like my coffee, how I like my silence, how I like my life when no one is lying to me. Sometimes people ask if I'll ever trust again. I don't answer immediately, because trust isn't a switch, it's a practice. One rooted in listening, especially to the quiet voice that says something isn't right. I trust myself now. That's the difference. On the anniversary of my mother's death, Claire and I visited her grave again. Just the two of us. We didn't cry this time. We talked. We laughed. We told her about the life she never got to see, and the one that finally made sense because of her. Before we left, I placed my hand on the stone, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt accompanied. I used to think betrayal shattered you. I know better now. Betrayal reveals. It strips away illusions you were taught to protect. It forces you to choose between shrinking to survive or standing fully in the truth of who you are. I chose the second, again, and again, and again. Mark faded from relevance, not because he was punished dramatically, but because he lost access to money, to narratives, to women who didn't see through him. He became a footnote, and that was justice enough. The story you've just heard isn't about revenge, it's about reclamation, of identity, of history, of voice. It's about a woman who was lied to and refused to stay confused, about a sisterhood born from theft that chose honesty over bitterness, about a mother whose love outlived deception, and about systems that rely on silence until someone speaks. My name is Evelyn Harper. I am 36 years old. I was stolen at birth, betrayed in marriage, and reborn through truth. I don't need a dramatic ending, because I wake up every day now in a life that finally belongs to me. And that is more than enough. If you stayed with this story until the end, first of all, thank you. Stories like this aren't easy to hear, and they're not easy to tell, but they matter. Because this wasn't just a story about cheating. It was a story about patterns, about how betrayal doesn't usually start with an affair. It starts with disrespect, with secrecy, with small lies that are dismissed as nothing. One of the biggest lessons in this story is this: a man who truly respects his wife doesn't protect his comfort at the cost of her clarity. He doesn't gaslight. He doesn't minimize. He doesn't call her crazy when she asks reasonable questions. He doesn't hide information, turn his phone face down, or make her feel guilty for wanting honesty. Cheating is rarely just about desire. It's about entitlement. And entitlement grows in silence. Another lesson this story teaches us: when a woman's intuition starts whispering, it's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Evelyn didn't wake up one day suspicious for no reason. She noticed changes, distance, deflection, evasiveness, and instead of being listened to, she was dismissed. That dismissal is often more damaging than the betrayal itself, because it teaches women to doubt their own reality, and that's dangerous. This story is also a reminder of something powerful. Truth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly, through documents, through timing, through people reacting in ways that don't match the story you've been told. And when the truth comes, it doesn't ask permission to change your life. But here's the part that matters most. Truth doesn't destroy healthy relationships. It only destroys the fake ones. If honesty ruins something, it means it was already broken. Let's talk about the husband for a moment. Mark didn't just cheat. He calculated. He gathered information. He positioned himself. He treated people like assets instead of humans. And that's the real danger, because when someone sees relationships as leverage, they stop seeing people as real. That's not love. That's strategy. And strategy has no place in marriage. If you're watching this and something feels familiar, if you've ever been told you were overreacting, imagining things, or making a big deal out of nothing, please hear this clearly. You are not difficult for wanting honesty. You are not dramatic for asking questions. And you are not weak for walking away when respect disappears. Walking away is not failure. Sometimes it's survival.